You believe you are a good person. Most people do. That belief feels solid, unshakable, built on years of choices, years of knowing yourself. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The people who committed the worst acts in human history believed the exact same thing. Not the monsters of movies, not the obvious villains. Ordinary people. People who loved their families, fed their dogs, helped their neighbors, and then, under the right conditions, did things that haunt historians forever. This is not a video about evil people. This is a video about the conditions that create evil, and how close, right now, those conditions are to you. For centuries, one explanation dominated. Evil people exist. They are born different, broken, twisted, separate from the rest of us. Find them, remove them, problem solved. It was a comforting theory. It was wrong. Philip Zimbardo, Stanford University.
Psychologist, spent 40 years studying this one question. Are evil acts committed by evil people, or are good people capable of evil acts? His conclusion destroyed the comfortable theory completely. He called it the Lucifer effect, the same way Lucifer, the most beautiful angel, fell from heaven, not because he was born evil, because of a situation, a choice, a context, a system. Evil, Zimbardo argued, is not a who, it is a when, a where, a how. The situation is the disease, the person is just the host. Stanford University, 1971. Philip Zimbardo wanted to test one thing. What happens when you give ordinary people power over other ordinary people? He built a fake prison in the basement of the psychology department, recruited 24 college students, all psychologically healthy, screened thoroughly, no history of violence, no criminal record, good students, normal lives. He flipped a coin. 12 became guards, 12 became prisoners. That was the only difference, a coin flip. Day 1, relatively normal. Day 2, guards started getting
Creative, pushing prisoners during counts, making them do unnecessary exercises, referring to them only by their numbers, never their names. Day 3, it escalated. Sleep deprivation started. Humiliation tactics appeared. One guard, student psychology major, normal kid, began making prisoners simulate sexual positions, laughing while doing it. Day 5, Zimbardo's girlfriend visited the experiment. Christina Maslach. She saw what was happening. She was horrified. She told Zimbardo, this has to stop. He had been so absorbed playing the role of prison superintendent that he had stopped seeing the suffering. He stopped the experiment on day 6. It was supposed to run 2 weeks. The guards had not been told to be cruel. Nobody asked them to humiliate. Nobody ordered the abuse. They invented it themselves. Within days, from nothing, because the system gave them permission. That's the finding that keeps psychologists awake at night. The guards were you. The guards were me. The guards were just people handed a uniform and a role and left alone with it. 1 year before.
Stanford, Yale University, 1960. Stanley Milgram had a different question, not about cruelty, about obedience. How far would an ordinary person go if an authority figure told them to hurt someone? His experiment was simple. Participant walks in, told they are part of a memory study. Another person seated behind a glass screen, connected to electrodes. The participant must ask questions. Every wrong answer, administer an electric shock, starting at 15 volts, increasing with every mistake, up to 450 volts. The label on the 450-volt switch said one thing: XXX. Here's what participants didn't know. The person behind the glass was an actor. No shocks were real, but the screams were recorded, and they were convincing. At 150 volts, the actor screamed to stop, said his heart was hurting, begged to be let out. Most participants paused, turned to the experimenter, visibly distressed. The experimenter said 4 words:
Please continue the experiment. 65% of participants went all the way to 450 votes, full knowing the person was in agony, full knowing what XXX meant, because a man in a lab coat told them to continue. 65%, not disturbed people, not aggressive people, regular people from New Haven,
Connecticut. Teachers, engineers, workers, people who went home that night and hugged their children. Milgram said something after the experiment, something that should stay with you. Ordinary people simply doing their jobs and without any particular hostility on their part can become agents in a terrible, destructive process. He wasn't describing monsters, he was describing the mechanism. The mechanism is obedience. The mechanism is authority. The mechanism is someone else taking responsibility. When the experimenter said, "I am responsible," compliance jumped even higher. Responsibility transferred and the barrier disappeared. Poland, Reserve Police Battalion 101, 500 middle-aged German men, not SS, not fanatics, reserve police officers. Average age, late 30s. Most had grown up before the Nazi Party even existed. Businessmen, factory workers, laborers. Historian Christopher Browning spent years studying them. His book, Ordinary Men, published 1992. What he found was not what he expected. Their commander, before the first mass killing, gave them a choice, explicitly. Older men who felt they could not carry out the order could step out. No punishment, no consequences. A direct, explicit choice. Less than 12 stepped out. Less than 12 out of 500. The rest stayed and carried out the killings. Browning asked the survivors, why? The answers were not about ideology, not about hatred, not about orders. The most common answer was peer pressure. They didn't want to seem weak. They didn't want to let their comrades down. They didn't want to be different. The same force that makes a teenager smoke a cigarette operated inside a genocide. The scale was incomprehensible. The mechanism was ordinary. Zimbardo identified the conditions, the recipe, if you want to call it that. Dehumanization first. Remove the human identity of the victim. Give them a number, a label, a category, not a person, a type. This is why genocides always start with language. Cockroaches, vermin, parasites. Once a person becomes a category, the normal human inhibition against harm begins to dissolve. Second condition, diffused responsibility. Nobody is fully responsible. Everyone is just following orders, just doing their job, just one small part of a large system. The hand that pulls the trigger doesn't design the policy. The person who designs the policy never pulls the trigger. Responsibility spreads so thin it disappears entirely. Third condition, gradual escalation. Nobody starts at the worst act. It always begins small, a slightly unfair rule, a minor humiliation, a small cruelty that goes unpunished. Each step makes the next step feel smaller. The distance between step 1 and step 10 feels enormous from outside. From inside, each step felt like barely a step at all. This is how ordinary workplaces become toxic, how ordinary relationships become abusive, how ordinary countries become authoritarian. Not overnight, step by step, each step normalized by the last.
Jerusalem. Adolf Eichmann on trial, architect of the Holocaust's logistics, the man who organized the trains, who coordinated the deportations, who made the paperwork run smoothly. Hannah Arendt, philosopher, covered the trial. She expected a monster. She found something far more disturbing. A bureaucrat, a middle manager, a man obsessed with career advancement, who used phrases like following orders and doing my duty without any apparent awareness of what those duties were. He wasn't stupid. He wasn't a sadist. He was, in her words, terribly and terrifyingly normal. She coined a phrase that changed philosophy forever: the banality of evil.
Evil is not always dramatic. Evil is not always obvious. Sometimes evil is paperwork. Sometimes evil is a career goal. Sometimes evil is just not thinking, not asking, not questioning, just doing the job. Arendt was attacked for this. People wanted a monster. A monster is easier. A monster is other. A bureaucrat is uncomfortably familiar. New York City. Kitty Genovese, attacked outside her apartment building. The attack lasted 35 minutes. Multiple neighbors heard her screams. One witness later said he didn't want to get involved. Psychologists John Darley and Bib Latane studied this response. They designed an experiment. Participant sits alone in a room, hears someone in the next room have a seizure. When participant believes they are the only one who can help, 85% immediately go for help. Now add more people. Tell the participant others are also hearing this. Help drops to 31%. The more people present, the less likely any individual is to act, because responsibility diffuses. Someone else will do it. Someone else already called. Someone else is handling it. This is not callousness. This is a psychological mechanism operating automatically, without conscious choice. The bystander effect operates everywhere. In offices where someone is being mistreated, in families where something is clearly wrong, in countries where injustice is visible,
and everyone assumes someone else is dealing with it. The crowd doesn't amplify response. The crowd dissolves it. Here's what the research also found. Evil systems are not inevitable. They require specific conditions. Remove one condition and the system begins to fail. In Milgram's experiment, when one other participant refused to continue, resistance jumped dramatically. One person, that's the variable. One person who names what is happening. One person who refuses to transfer responsibility. One person who says, "This is wrong, and I am saying so out loud." Zimbardo spent the second half of his career studying not evil, but heroism. What makes ordinary people resist? His finding was simple. Heroes are not special people. Heroes are people who act at the moment when acting is most costly, not because they are braver, because they have decided in advance who they will be when the moment arrives. The decision is made before the situation, not inside it. Inside it, there is no time. Inside it, the situation has already begun reshaping you. You have been in systems your entire life. Families, schools, workplaces, countries. Every system has pressure. Every system has roles. Every moment where the easier thing and the right thing are not the same. You have probably, without realizing it, been the bystander, diffused responsibility to the crowd, followed the authority, taken one small step that made the next step feel smaller. Not because you are evil, because you are human, and humans are extraordinarily vulnerable to exactly these mechanisms. Zimbardo didn't study evil to condemn people, he studied it to warn them. The warning is this: the line between good and evil is not a wall, it is not a personality type, it is a set of conditions, and the conditions are closer than you think.
Philip Zimbardo ended his career with one argument. He'd spent 40 years studying the worst of us, and he concluded that the most important thing he could teach was not how to identify evil people, it was how to resist evil situations. Know the mechanisms, name them when you see them, refuse to dehumanize even when the system rewards it, refuse to diffuse responsibility even when everyone else does. Act at the first small step, not the 10th, because by the 10th, the first step is invisible, and you have already walked too far to remember where you started. The guards in Stanford basement were college students 2 days before. The men in Reserve Battalion 101 were fathers the morning they went to work. Eichmann went home every night to a family. This is not a video about evil people. It never was. It is a video about a mirror and what you do with what you see in it.